Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. Today I want to talk about a very serious topic when it comes to business, when it comes to life. That topic is resilience. I believe it's the real edge in business and life. See, everyone talks about success like it's a straight climb, but if you've ever built something from scratch, you know that success usually comes down to how many times you don't quit. Angela Duckworth, the author of Grit, defines grit as passion and perseverance for long-term goals. And honestly, I think that's the hidden ingredient most people overlook in business. You see, Duckworth's research shows that talent doesn't predict success. Grit does. How hard are you willing to try and fail? It's not about how smart or gifted you are. It's how long you can stay consistent when things stop being exciting. Guys, this is really serious for us in our businesses. This is really serious for us when we take an idea to go into business. It's really easy to get excited about this thing that we have in our mind that nobody else has. But when the going gets tough, that's going to be the real kicker. That's going to be the difference between somebody that fails and somebody that succeeds. In business, that's the late nights when revenue dips. In life, it's when the plan falls apart and you have to build from scratch. People who keep showing up no matter what, even when it's not glamorous, those are the ones who will eventually win. Here's a couple of actionable strategies. It's going to help you build resilience. See, resilience, I believe, is a muscle. Much like when you train muscles to work out, it's the same thing. If I want to build my shoulder muscle, I need to put it under stress. I need to put it under tension over and over and over in order to build the muscle that's there. It's the same thing with things like resilience and grit. First, we want to detach my identity from the outcome. It was extremely important for me very early on in life. I struggled with a drug addiction for a long time. I ended up in various rehabs. I ended up incarcerated. So there was a few things that I had to work through to detach my identity from any outcome that ever occurred. I had to learn this because I continued to make mistakes, and I could not think that I was a mistake. I could not think that just because I was making mistakes, that my identity needed to be attached to those mistakes. And it did help me finally get totally clean from the drugs that I was using, which is insane to think about. That doesn't always happen. I'm extremely fortunate, very lucky, and very blessed to not only have gone through that and come out on the other side, but to know that there's lessons that I take with me even now that I look at and I can see it was a lot easier for me to have had to gone through that really hard place to change, to know what it means to change, and to know what it means to have the need for change. I think that we really struggle with that in business and life now. If we haven't gone through maybe a traumatic experience, maybe gone through some early on issues, it can be hard later on to see when we really need change. I think now for me, it's easy for me to detach my identity from the outcome on a lot of things. It includes business, right? So we can fail at a strategy without being a failure. That shift keeps me experimenting instead of spiraling, right? So for instance, my first business, I had actually, up until this point, I had made another business that I got an LLC for, that I made a full business plan for, and I never executed on that particular business. And that's okay, because I learned a lot from it. I learned how to organize myself and get ready to execute. And so the very next business that I stepped into was an Amazon fulfillment business. Now, this one was the first Amazon business that I was a part of, and this was drop shipping. I never saw products. Those products would come from the manufacturer directly to the customer, which was awesome. But I had no idea what I was doing. I was so early on. I had no idea the importance of marketing. I had no idea the importance of making sure to follow up with customers, ask for reviews, things like that. I just had no idea. And once it was a success in its own right? We made like $7 a day for, I don't know, 300 days or something. It was a success in its own right, but I didn't know how to do it again. I didn't know how to cycle through it again. And so I think that for me, it was to continue to experiment. And once that failed and it kind of fizzled out because I didn't know what I was doing, I didn't attach my identity to this thing fizzling out. And this happens again for me in a couple of my other businesses, right? Some of those businesses failed. They were intelligent fails. They were fails of, I made 50 grand, but I didn't know what else to do after that. Or they were fails like the return on investment it was only like a 5% return. It was still a return, but not enough for me to continue going. Some of them were intelligent fails where, they totally won. I had the business acquired by another person, and it ends up that guy stopped paying. So we had to take him to court. So these were intelligent fails. They were interesting fails. In other words, when I say fail, I just mean I didn't end up being a millionaire off of them. But I can't attach my identity to that. If I attach my identity to that, I begin to spiral out. So that's the first thing. We don't want to attach our identity to the outcome of the business or whatever we're pursuing in life. The second thing is we want to build micro disciplines. We just talked about building that shoulder muscle, right? Same thing for resilience. I want to pick one small habit that we don't negotiate with. For me and my family, my wife, we hit CrossFit every day, almost every day. I think at 3 days on, 1 day off. Plus, some of our other micro disciplines, we like to rock climb. So there's 2 days a week that we do something called 4x4s, which is this hellacious way to climb to try to increase finger strength, endurance strength, just all around rock climbing strength. And it is not a fun way to climb. It is not how we enjoy climbing, but we've seen such results in what we're able to do when we do go climb for fun, that this is just a micro discipline that we're building in. I'll say this, anybody that's already in sports, if you're already in sports and you're an entrepreneur, this shit makes sense. Resilience comes from sports. Resilience comes from losing, right? For us, rock climbing, you fall every single time. There's not a single time where I go bouldering or I go rock climbing that I don't fall, because even when I get to the top, I still need to come back down from where I started. So that is a natural way to build resilience. If you don't have resilience right now and you notice that you begin to spiral quickly, go build some resilience. Go enroll in a CrossFit gym. Go to a group class of some kind of physical sport. All this is going to do is it's going to teach you how to be resilient over time. And then my suggestion to you is, when it gets hard, show up again. We're talking about the muscles of resilience. We're not talking about how smart am I to be able to do this. It doesn't matter how smart I am whenever I go to CrossFit. They don't care about my intelligence. They also don't care how fast I get it done. Truly, all they care about is getting it done. And what's cool is I can scale back. I can always, the workout that's being placed up there, or the sport that you're trying to play, or how fast you're trying to run, all of that is great. But what's even better is doing it in a way that you can show up again tomorrow. That is resilience, and that's what we're trying to build today. It's the key ingredient to business. It's the key ingredient to doing it again. If we're looking at Elon Musk, if we're looking at Mark Zuckerberg, guys, they weren't overnight successes. I know that's how we see it. That's how the world sees it. But these guys were building things before their success became a success. They were building things that failed. They were intelligently failing. There's an interesting study out of Harvard. The professor, I'll find it. I'll throw it in the description below. But her definition of an intelligent fail was, a regular failure is you doing something that you've always been able to do and you just failed at it today. So maybe I've always been able to do 5 push-ups, but today I was only able to do 3. Her definition of an intelligent fail is you trying things that you're not familiar with and failing. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to build resilience inside business, and we're trying to build experience inside business. We're going to get better at it. So the first one, detach your identity from the outcome. The second one, we want to build in those micro disciplines, right? If we send out an outreach email 1 a day or showing a 20-minute workout, tiny wins stack up and rebuild confidence when things feel shaky. The third thing is we want to reframe adversity or the outcome that doesn't happen the way that we want it to as data. Instead of saying that this didn't work, ask, what is this teaching me about timing, people, or process? That mental pivot keeps us curious instead of defeated. There's an example from one of the businesses that I had. I started a commercial and residential cleaning company. I was still in college at the time. I was in electrical engineering school actually at the time. So I was in some pretty intense science and math courses. When I had been cold calling in between some of my homework sessions, cold calling businesses because I'm trying to gain some more commercial cleaning companies. And I would only do it for about an hour a day, right? This is the only time that I had in between working and school, studying for electrical engineering. It was a lot. So for me, I would take an hour every day. Even if it only got me, 5 phone calls that day, I would still call. First thing I'll say about that, cold calling, any kind of door knocking, any kind of sales experience automatically builds resilience. Do it. If you have the chance, do it. Robert Kiyosaki says, don't take a job because it's something, because it's just paying the bills. Take a job for a lesson that you want to learn. So for him, it was sales. He wanted to get better at selling people. And so sales it's worth it. It's worth going door knocking. It's worth being a cold caller. It's worth being a call center person. It's only going to build your people skills later. And as an entrepreneur, that's all we need. And so at this particular time, I, of course, is making these cold calls. I'll never forget this ever in my life. I had landed I've been cold calling for weeks, businesses. I mean, people would just hang up on me. It was crazy. I had just landed an opportunity to meet with a vice president of operations at a manufacturing plant for a commercial cleaning job. I had a quiz that day it might have been electromagnetics, or it could have been one of my physics classes. I'm not sure. It was like physics 3 or something insane. I took my wife up there. I cried the whole time because I was late. So we actually land the deal. I feel like I'm going to be late coming back for my quiz. And this is like one of my first quizzes in my physics 3 class. I come back and I'm like I enjoyed being an A+ student. I prided myself on an A+. How funny, all my peers around me are like, shit, we could pass with C's. Who cares as long as we keep showing up? This is resilience, right? I was so sad. I'm like crying on my way back to school because this job was like 30 or 45 minutes away. At the time, my wife and I are sharing a car because, this is where we come from and we're trying to rebuild, and I'm a student, and it's insane. And I remember crying on the way back. We had sold the job for an every week commercial cleaning job, which is huge, right? That we were going to be there every week on Saturdays. They were going to trust us enough to come in on the weekends, or maybe that was the stress. I think it started out on the weekdays. That's it. And so I actually completed the job. It took me forever to complete the job because I was a one-person show. And I come back to take my quiz, and I completed that quiz. I ended up getting a B on it. B, still passing, but I was sad. I'm going to tell you what resilience did for me in this moment. Resilience told me to ask. Reframe this adversity as data, right? This is our number 3. It told me that I needed to look at this and say, what have I learned? Not how much does this hurt, how much I'm not going to do this again, how much whatever. And all of those thoughts were in my head. But I needed to figure out what the next step was. And guess what the next step was? It wasn't me quitting. It wasn't me quitting school or the business. It was me calling that vice president of operations, stating, hey, it would be really helpful if we were able to hit this one on the weekend. And she trusted us enough to give us a key card and everything to be able to do that on the weekends as our first commercial cleaning. I just want to reiterate that resilience isn't it not being hard. Resilience is even though my shoulder is burning, I'm going to finish those 12 that I said I was going to do, and I'm going to rest to do the next set. Resilience is still getting up and going the next day. Resilience that day was me still going back to my physics 3 quiz, even though I had no idea what was going on or what to do. And then resilience was coming up with a solution afterwards when it didn't feel so good. Resilience is going to be the toughest thing in your journey as a business owner. You can build that, of course, by going through these micro disciplines. You're going to build it even better at least what I have found, is when I do business with people, when I partner with people, I become more resilient automatically because I'm working to encourage them. And so that could also be a takeaway here, that resilience can come from you micro-disciplining your way to resilience. It can also come from that automatic accountability that we have when we come together. I just think that resilience is going to be the reason somebody fails and somebody succeeds. If you're in that season right now where it feels like things aren't working, remember, grit is not the loudest thing. It is quiet persistence. Build your resilience muscle, because in business and life, the ones who make it aren't the fastest. They're the ones who refuse to stop. Thank you so much for joining Build Something Real. Make sure to like and subscribe. Let me know what else you guys want to see. Talk to you soon.